Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our January 11th, 2021 electronic meeting of the City Council. We meet electronically due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. Please note that in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda and on the City of Concord's website at concordnh.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the City Council have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: us02web.zoom.us/J/81204172709. If any member of the public does not have a website access, they may dial the telephone number 1-929-205-6099. If dialing from a landline, you may call in toll-free at 877-853-5257. The webinar ID number is 812-0417-2709. For those of you who want to provide public testimony at our public hearing portion of the meeting, you are connected to the Zoom website. You may click on the hand raise icon, and the attendee section will make the request. When the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized by me, and you can provide your testimony. For members of the public who are participating by phone, you may dial *9 to alert me that you want to testify. We will not be using the chat function in the Zoom for this meeting. Please note that testimony is only allowed for agenda items that have been scheduled for the public hearing, and the public participation is not authorized for any other item on the agenda. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-3718 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at a later time. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance, and when you state your presence at the meeting, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Councilor Bouchard.
Present, home in a room alone.
Mayor Boulay.
I am home in a room by myself.
Councilor Champlin.
I am home in a room in my house alone.
Councilor Fennessy.
I am present. I am in a room at my house by myself.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
I am present. I am at my home in a room with my son, Sam.
Hey, Sam.
Hey, Ham.
Councilor Hatfield.
I'm here and I'm home in a room by myself.
Councilor Keach.
Home alone by myself.
Councilor Kennison.
Hi, I'm home alone except for my cat who finds these meetings very boring.
Councilor Kretovic.
It's very funny. I'm at home. I'm in a loft. My husband, Bill, and my son, Jack, are in the space. And that's funny because the cat just wandered in the room.
Councilor Mattson.
Hi, I'm here alone in my room at home.
Councilor Nyan.
Present, at home, alone.
Councilor Pierce.
Present, at home, alone.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Present, alone in this room at home.
Councilor Todd.
Here at home, alone in this room.
And Councilor Werner.
Here, alone in this room.
Great, it's good to see everyone. That takes us to our Pledge of Allegiance. And if you could all unmute yourself and join me, that'd be great. Ready? I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
Of
the
United States of
America.
And to the
Republic
for which it stands,
one
One
nation, under God,
indivisible,
for all.
With liberty and justice for all.
We're getting better each time. Thank you.
You're very kind. Please don't make us sing, Mr. Mayor.
No, there'll be no singing. That's my present, my gift. So we do have minutes before us. They're the minutes of December 14th from the 2020 City Council meeting. If everyone gets a chance to have had a chance to review those, can we get a motion?
Move approval.
Motion made, second to approve those minutes. Are there any suggestions, corrections, changes? Seeing none. If we're
Your
ready to
Honor,
vote-
pardon
Excuse
me,
I'm sorry,
on page,
Council Hatfield.
yes, thank you. On page 5, near the top of the page, regarding the consent agenda, it looks like there's just an extra E after the word negotiating.
Okay, with that change then, thank you. Madam Clerk, you have that?
I've got that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that and with that change, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Counselor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Counselor Champlin,
Yes.
Counselor Fennessy,
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield,
Yes.
Counselor Keach,
Yes.
Counselor Kennison,
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic,
Yes.
Counselor Matson,
Yes.
Counselor Nyan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
and Counselor Werner.
Yes.
And with that, motion is adopted. That takes us to our consent agenda this evening. I have not been notified of anything being removed from the consent agenda. Last chance, does anybody have anything? Okay, seeing none, then can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve the consent agenda. With that, are we ready for the question? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Counselor Champlin,
Yes.
Counselor Fennessy,
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield,
Yes.
Counselor Keach,
Yes.
Counselor Kennison,
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic,
Yes.
Counselor Matson,
Yes.
Counselor Nyan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
and Counselor Werner.
Yes.
That the motion is adopted. We now move on to our public hearings. Madam Clerk, if you could read item 25A, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan, Schedule D of Article 35-2, Class Specification Index. It is relative to the Assistant City Prosecutor Solicitor position.
Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, the legal department has requested that a new position be created entitled Assistant City Prosecutor / Solicitor. And the idea here is the Assistant City Prosecutor position that becomes vacant or that became vacant on December 31st would be changed to this new title. So in addition to managing criminal cases in the prosecutor's office, the individual filling the position will also assist in handling responses to right-to-know requests and other civil legal matters as assigned. With the creation of the position, the legal department would not be increasing the total number of attorneys in the department. Instead, the new position would handle criminal and civil matters for both the prosecutor's office and the city solicitor's office. The position has been classified at labor grade 22. It will be placed in the city's classification system as a non-contractual exempt employee. The creation of this position will not require any additional funding. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And who has questions for the manager? Mr. Fennessy, Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Couple questions. First question is, sort of what was the driving factor behind this decision to essentially shift? It looks like a full-time position to a half-time position in the prosecutor's office.
So actually, there's a. Unless Jim, would you like to handle this one, or you want me to do it?
Sure, I can.
Okay, I'll let Jim Kennedy go.
Right, we saw that we've been moving in this direction since felonies first had come to the court system and moving the felony arraignments outside of the prosecutor's office. We've been contemplating this for some time, but we actually saw that, especially with the domestic issues and other matters in the prosecutor's office, that it was going to be more difficult to remove that position even with felonies first. In fact, we saw that many prosecutors' offices throughout the state were increasing staff as opposed to reducing staff for the misdemeanor and violation level offenses. So with us, we are, not wanting to get rid of the position, but also seeing a great need on the civil side, especially with the police department concerning right to know requests and transparency there is taking up quite a bit of time for my office, and wonder if there's a way to manage those cases with a prosecutor who would be intimately familiar with the right to know matters going on in the police department as well in the first instance, and then further develop their civil practice as time would permit. But right now, we're seeing a great need for prosecutors in the prosecutor's office. There's been a tremendous backload of cases, as you all can imagine. And so there's a huge bottleneck of cases that's going to slowly be released. And so the work facing a prosecutor's office right now is tremendous. And so I would anticipate that this role right now would probably be more criminal than civil at this juncture. But we wanted to have the latitude down the road to increase the civil responsibilities when that bottleneck slowly releases out. And should there be a time, as we anticipated even a couple of years ago, that this would occur. But right now, having the mutual role really is something that we would prefer and think that it's in the best interest of the legal department going forward.
Thank you. Councilor Fennessy, do you have another question?
Just a quick follow-up. So it sounds like from your answer that the focus, at least for now, is going to remain on the criminal aspect of that position. I guess my question would be, do you have any concerns about identifying candidates who are going to be able to fill sort of both that prosecutor role and 91A, which tends to be kind of a very different skill?
I think so. I mean, but our prosecutor's office has been trained, and they'll continue to be trained. All the attorneys there on the right to know law, that attended CLE trainings and information that we provide, and they assist already with a large matter of right to know matters involving the police department and their office. And so the more that attorneys that have information about that law, quite frankly, transparency is better for the legal department's functionality as a whole. Identifying one person who can assist the police department and evolve into other departments and other civil matters as a whole would be great. But I think that, identifying that person right out of the box, upon hire, I'm not so sure that that person necessarily exists. Although I must say, when I was at the AG's office, I did criminal prosecution as well as right to law and a whole host of other matters. So there are positions, I think, that exist out there where a person could come in with these types of skills. Although I think it'll be a process. Certainly, as I indicated earlier, with the heavy load of criminal matters pending right now in the court and on the docket for our office, it's going to be a time in the making. But I think overall, in the long term, that this type of position will open up matters for us, and have a candidate who has those, and a lawyer who has both of those disciplines would be a great asset for us.
Further question? Anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, at this time we'll open the public hearing on item 25A. Is there anyone wishing to testify? I don't have any of the hands raised among the attendees. Mr. Manager, do you have anybody on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, seeing no one on the phone and no attendee wishing to testify, this time we'll close the public hearing. And we will move on to item 25B, Madam Clerk. If you wouldn't mind, please call in and reading that.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $718,000 for the replacement of existing outdoor lighting fixtures with LED fixtures, accepting the sum of $325,000 in incentive funding from Unitil's Energy Efficiency Program, authorizing the sum of $393,000 as on-bill financing for the remaining balance, and authorizing the city manager to enter into a long-term agreement with Unitil for this project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager, you can take yourself off mute and tell us all about the presentation.
Just missed the button. The button. The Deputy City Manager LeBrun speak to this along with our expert consultant Beth Greenblatt.
Great. Good evening. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. As you know, we have been working on trying to bring an LED streetlight project to the city for 10 plus years. We've been working very closely with Beth Greenblatt and Unitil in making this all happen. In the report that you have in front of you, you can see that we have a estimated amount of money for the project. Part of it, half of it would be a grant from Unitil. The other half, or the other portion, would be on-bill financing, which really means that the city at this point would have no out-of-pocket expenditure other than the dollars we would be able to get from a grant and on-bill financing. Ms. Greenblatt has a very brief presentation that she's prepared, and then we can answer any questions that you may have and hopefully seek your approval during the action phase of this program. Thank you. Turn it over to Beth Greenblatt, and Tom will share screen so that he can show the presentation.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Ms. Greenblatt.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and thank you all. Happy New Year to you all. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you about this very exciting project that the city has been working. Can you hear me?
We can. We're all just trying to figure out the picture on your screen.
I can't hear the mayor.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was teasing and I said, Ms. Greenblatt, we're all interested in your presentation, but we're curious about your picture on your screen.
I don't know why my video is not, why you're not picking up my video. I apologize, but what unfortunately I think you're looking at is my Halloween costume from senior year in high school, which was a few years ago. In any case, thank you all for the opportunity. Brian, can either of you get the presentation, or?
We are working on it right now.
Okay. Excellent.
There we go.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to.
Have it, Beth?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay.
I'd first like to start by thanking an incredible team in Concord who's been working on this project for many, many years. I'd like to thank Brian, Jim Kennedy for their efforts, certainly Tina Waterman and Dave Cedarholm. I'd also like to thank Gary Miller from Unitil for shepherding all of our issues across the transom over at Unitil. It has been a fun challenge, but I think we're in a really exciting place. As you can see here, in May of 2017, Unitil actually implemented a new street lighting tariff that incorporated LED streetlights into their traditional schedule. That then gave the city an opportunity to undertake a project that has been contemplated for probably 5 years in the making, certainly. This allows, as an unmetered rate schedule, to be available for governmental bodies, meaning it's a sort of a consolidated account for all outdoor lighting, lighting fixtures. Under this program, the customer, the city in this case, must buy out the existing light fixtures and brackets, pay for the removal, the purchase, and the installation of new fixtures to replace the old fixtures. The city can then maintain the new light fixtures or pay Unitil under their standard tariff rates to maintain those fixtures over time. The financial offer, as Brian has recently has just said, will cover 50% of the total installed cost of the equipment by rebate or grant incentive, and the balance is financed at 0% and charged on the utility bill as a charge against, on the bill. I believe you folks have seen the economics of this project. One of the agreements that we made with the utility, along with the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, who needed to approve this project on behalf of the city and Unitil, was that the city would pay off the on-bill financed portion of the project over a 5-year period. And as you can see here, during the first 5 years, including the combination of the payment for the non-rebate portion of the project, plus the on-bill finance portion of the initial buyout, there is estimated savings on an annual basis from this project. The actual electricity usage declined substantially, significantly, more than 50% is the projected number. But as you can see here, for the first several years of for the first 2 years of the project, there's an estimated benefit of $27,000, and then the benefit is relatively levelized, $19,000-$20,000 for the next several years. Once the on-bill finance portion is paid off after the first 5 years, all of the savings accrues directly to the city for the balance of the life of the equipment. These fixtures are generally 10-year fixtures, depending on their hours of operation. As you can see here, we estimated 0 operations and maintenance costs in the first 2 years. And that's specifically because we made a determination to include in the procurement documents a requirement for a 2-year warranty for labor and materials to cover those. As folks know, typically this type of technology will, if there is an issue or a technical problem, it typically happens in the first couple of years. From a regulatory program, again, the city is anticipating under this program replacing approximately 2,100 streetlights after buying those out from Unitil at their undepreciated net book value, which is in the $65,000 to $70,000 range. We'll know once we ask for that final number. And such costs, as I mentioned earlier, will be financed on the monthly utility bill with no interest charge. The city will remove and install qualifying streetlights that meet the tariff of Unitil through a qualified contractor as a result of a competitive procurement the city will issue. Unitil will provide a grant incentive of the lesser of $325,000 or 50% of the total cost to install the entire portfolio of the streetlights expected. And then again, Unitil will provide that 0% loan for the balance of the cost up to a maximum of $325,000 and will invoice that on the monthly utility invoice. And the new streetlights will be built under the new LED rate schedule for these types of fixtures at their rated wattage. Tina Waterman and I and Dave Cederholm and others have been working very hard at preparing a request for proposals for the city to issue once City Council grants approval of this project, provided City Council grants approval of this project. It's a full turnkey scope of work, including project management. We are asking for an inventory to be provided as a result of a comprehensive audit of all of the existing fixtures. We do have a list of fixtures that the city has done some due diligence on that was provided to the city by Unitil, but we are proposing to do a full-scale audit to understand everything that's there, including the wattage and the type of fixture that exists, as well as any other specific information relative to that installation. The firm will interface completely with Unitil. They will provide outdoor lighting design and selection, replacement strategy and proposal. They will purchase and install the new fixtures, provide a 2-year warranty obligation for equipment and labor, and at the conclusion of the project, provide as-built documents, including GPS address identification that is capable to be integrated into the city's GIS software. This will enable very good addressing of each of these fixtures to allow for proper maintenance and any replacement that's necessary by identification. The RFP has been prepared, reviewed by all of the appropriate city departments. As prior research the city has done for the downtown area has been taken into consideration with respect to color selection, and the RFP is compliant with all of the requirements set forth by Unitil in their LED tariff. We anticipate this project to be completed this calendar year. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. Councilor Hatfield, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Ms. Greenblatt. And also thank you, Mr. LeBrun, to you and city staff for all of the work that I know has gone into this. It's exciting, and the payback is pretty impressive. I did just want to ask a question. I've had a couple constituents who are both excited about this for the savings, but also because they feel like it will provide better light quality on sidewalk areas. And they asked me if there were examples in the city where we already have LEDs. And I wanted to just confirm 2 places where I think we have them, and then have you share if there were others that people could look at. And one is actually the downtown area. But also I noticed recently on Jennings Drive, right off of Pennacook Street, that it appeared that Unitil had replaced their lighting with LEDs. And it looked to me like it really did a nice job of illuminating the ground better. But also for those with dark skies concerns, it did seem like the light was very nicely shielded and directed downward. So I was wondering if you could speak to the safety improvements if they exist, and also the dark skies compliance.
So we definitely have LED streetlights on Main Street downtown, which has been very well received. Those are a little bit lower to the ground, so a little bit lesser wattage, but it provides the same type of soft light and better lighting that you would see with LED lights. The other place that we have for the city is in the general services parking lot, and those are a little bit brighter lights in the parking lot, so that provides extremely good light over there too. The Unitil lights may be, I can't confirm, but I'm assuming that the Unitil lights are also LED lights as well, but I can't confirm that. Tom, you may have something to add?
Yes, the Concord Housing and Redevelopment Authority replaced those lights recently from the original lights that were installed. And as a matter of fact, received city council approval to move forward with doing that, and we encourage them to do that. So Councilor Hatfield is exactly right. Those are LED, and those are, they are on a smaller scale, as I think she pointed out, because of their height, but they do accomplish the dark skies policy actions that both the city council and the planning board wanted us to move towards.
And the arena also has LED lights that you can see as well.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing no further questions this time, then you'll open the public hearing on item 25B. Is there anyone wishing to testify? Seeing no attendees, is there anyone on the phone, Mr. Manager?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. With that, then we will close the public hearing and we'll move on to 25C. Madam Clerk, if you wouldn't mind reading 25C.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $49,000 for the acquisition of conservation land as recommended by the Conservation Commission, authorizing the use of $49,000 in conservation trust funds for this purpose, and authorizing the acquisition of land south of and adjacent to the discontinued portion of District Number 5 Road.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, I'll first to start off with one thing. The resolution, the title on the resolution says 49,000, but the correct amount is 49,900, which you can see in the body of the resolution itself. So I'd ask that when you vote on the resolution, you vote on the amount of 49,900. And as far as the report goes, I see Mr. Jim Hours is here, so I know he'll speak from the Conservation Commission, and Beth Benstemark is here. But just to go over it briefly, the subject property is located within the conservation focus area identified as Beach Hill, the 2017 Conservation Report Space Plan. The area was identified as a priority for acquisition because, in part, of its large unfragmented forest has moderately high resilience value due to habitat connectivity and ecological integrity. Contains protected forest land, is identified as a high priority. The Merrimack River Conservation Plan is identified as the highest ranked habitat in New Hampshire in the state of New Hampshire Fish and Game Wildlife Action Plan. The property adds to the large contiguous block of conservation land totaling 1,950 acres in Concord. The property was appraised at 49,900 as is. Mr. Ledbetter agreed to sell the property at the as-is appraised value. The Conservation Commission voted unanimously at the public hearing November 10th in favor of the acquisition of the 35-acre plus or minus parcel. Upon acquisition, the Conservation Commission will manage the property to protect the natural resources, maintain and improve, protect and limit the future use of, and otherwise conserve the property to utilize this property as open space together with other land and water resources within the city. Be glad to answer any questions, but actually, as I mentioned, Jim Hours and Beth Benstemark are here to give you more detail if you need it.
Okay, we'll recognize them during the public hearing if they wish to speak. Anybody have any questions for the manager at this point? Okay, let's get right to the public hearing then. And Mr. Hours, how about we recognize you first?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this parcel. My name is Jim Hours, and I'm Vice Chair of the Concord Conservation Commission. I think you've already heard about the conservation value of the property. Just so you know exactly where it is, it's on the Hopkinton town line at the top of Beach Hill and at the end of the west end of the District 5 road that was discontinued. And it also abuts the Country Hill property, which you approved for purchase in 2018. We also bought another property from the Leadbeater family that's listed on your map there in July. We closed on that, and that was an 11-acre parcel. And then below that is the Desjardins property, which we purchased in 2009. So we're slowly connecting the dots here. So ultimately, and aside from the conservation value, which I just wanted to talk a little bit about, is that there is an important north-south snowmobile trail which runs from Courier Road up to the discontinued portion of District 5 Road and then exits into Hopkinton onto, it's the continuation of Patch Road in Hopkinton, if you're familiar with that. And then it heads on down into, well, actually, if you're riding a snowmobile, you can get to the top of Kearsarge from there. So it's important for them, and we would also like to eventually open that up for public access as well. And this is a critical link in that, as you can see. The other thing it does is that it will give the city complete access to District 5 Road from the point where it was discontinued in 1953, which you can see on your map. And then that will go all the way through to the Hopkinton town line. So, and that we would like to see at some point opened up for public recreation as well. So these are the, in addition to the conservation value, it does provide a missing link. And we would like to have the city council approve that acquisition. The price is $49,900. I should also mention that there is some valuable timber on this property. If it is logged, it would probably be done in conjunction with the Country Hill property, which we've also had a recent forest management plan completed. That's
great. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. Does anybody have any questions? Councilor Kennison? Counselor, I believe you're still on mute.
I'm looking at the resolution that says a sum of $49,000, and what I'm hearing from the manager is $49,900, and I think from Mr. Owers as well.
Yes, that was a typographical mistake, and we'll make sure we correct it when we take it up later on.
that was the appraisal, 49,900, which Eric Ledbeater has agreed to accept.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Seeing none, I just want to say thank you very much for all you do with the Conservation Commission and on behalf of the city. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, the city council's appreciated too. You've been very supportive of our work here.
So is there anyone else wishing to testify? Could we please recognize Rob Knight, please? Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I'm Rob Knight. I'm the chair of the Concord Trails Committee. And I just wanted to echo that this property is very important with respect to trail connectivity. The connection from the end of District 5 Road is also the connection from the West End Farm Trail, which is one of our popular trails. And it gives us access up to the top of Beach Hill and down to Mast Yard State Forest, which continues on over to the River Hill Trail network and connects down to Curry Road and to Hopkinton. And it may be surprising, but there are a lot of people in Concord who travel long distances on these trails, either by bicycle or running. And so you have people who go from Wynett Park to Swope Park, up to Carter Hill, down to the West End Farm Trail, and then continue on to Mast Yard and make a big loop. And so this is really important for enabling that connection. And the snowmobile trail is also used by a lot of runners, cyclists, and hikers. So that's a nice connection. And the District 5 Road along the edge of this property is a very, very pretty hike on its own. It just makes a very nice walk. So I strongly support the acquisition of this property.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, we very much appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you again. If we could now bring in Ray into panelists. Good evening, Ray. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name. Good evening, Ray. Can you hear us? Ray, it looks like you're still on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We sure can. Welcome.
Oh, welcome, and I thank everybody for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ray Cody, and I'm on the board of directors and also trail volunteers with the Bow Pioneers Club of New Hampshire. This link is very important to Corridor 11 North Trail, and all we can say is that it's a beautiful trail, and it definitely is an added value to all trail enthusiasts, and we really appreciate this trail. It's wonderful. So thank you for the opportunity to let me speak tonight.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Cody? Seeing none, thank you again for coming out and your patience this evening. Greatly appreciated. Anyone else wishing to testify? Not seeing anyone. Mr. Spell, do we have anybody on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
All right, with that, we'll close the public, excuse me, close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you could read 25D, please.
Public hearing for the purposes of discussing a progress report regarding community development block grant funds secured by the city in 2019 for infrastructure improvements at the top of the hill manufactured housing park cooperative located at 190 Manchester Street in Concord.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
We'll bring Mr. Walsh on and he can speak to these items.
Good evening, Mr. Walsh. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. I'm going to walk us through the public hearings for 25D, E, F, G, and H. Your Honor, I assume you want to do these all as separate public hearings?
Well, I will come clean and tell you that it was my desire to group them all together, but I was informed that I could not do that. So to stay with the advice of our legal counsel and manager, yes, we are going to do all these all separately.
Very good. As fast as we can. All right, so for item 25D, I'm going to just start with an introduction. Community development block grants are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Annually, up to $500,000 is available for economic development projects. Up to $500,000 is available for public facility projects. Up to $500,000 is available for housing projects, and another $500,000 is also available for emergency activities. In addition, up to $25,000 is available for planning grants as well. All projects must directly benefit a majority of low and moderate income persons. I will note that there's a handout that's been attached to item 25D, as well as E, F, G, and H, which we'll talk about later, which explains the Community Development Block Grant Program in detail. For item 25D, this is a public hearing on a status report for the Top of the Hill Cooperative. Specifically, it's concerning utility improvements at the Top of the Hill Manufactured Housing Cooperative located at 190 Manchester Street, Concord, which are financed in part with a $500,000 Community Development Block Grant. The cooperative purchased the 25-unit park in January of 2019. At the time of the purchase, the park was supported by by private septic systems that were at the end of their useful life. Due to the space constraints and topography at the park desired to connect to the municipal sewer system. I'm pleased to report that gravity and force mains have been installed and the base course of pavement was in place as of October of 2020. The pump station structures and associated backup generator are also in place for the sewer connection. Once the electrical system is connected, the contractor will begin connecting each home to the new system. Service connections are expected to begin actually last month and will be completed sometime this spring with the final wearing course of pavement to be installed at that time, as well as future site restoration items. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Anybody have questions for Mr. Walsh? Okay, seeing that, we're going to open the public hearing on this item at this time. Is there anyone wishing to testify? Seeing none of our attendees raising their hand, Mr. Manager, is there anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
So with that, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you could read item 25E, please.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application in an amount of up to $500,000 and to accept and appropriate grant proceeds of up to $500,000 in housing community development block grant funds for improvement of properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health Incorporated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, you are on mute.
I apologize. Your Honor, this is a proposed application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in 2021 Community Development Block Grant housing and potentially public facility funds to support rehabilitation and renovation of residential properties located at 111 Pleasant Street and 4-6 Fayette Street here in Concord, which are operated by Riverbend Community Mental Health. 111 Pleasant Street houses 15 individuals with chronic mental illness, and 4-6 Fayette Street houses 9 individuals with chronic mental illness. We anticipate that this grant application will be residential in nature. All residents are low income. Proposed improvements will include, but are not limited to, remodeling client rooms, window replacement, as well as renovation of kitchens and common areas. I would also need to note that the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority has made a recent decision to adjust their calendar year to mirror the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's July to June fiscal year calendar, which has caused what we would have been the first round of the 2021 HUD funds to now result in a third round of 2020 housing funds. So this request is from the 2020/2021 CDBG funding round. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Walsh? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing at this time. I have no attendees raising their hand. Mr. Manager, do you have anybody on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, can you read the next item, please?
It's a resolution readopting the city's anti-displacement and relocation policy statement and procedures in support of the city's housing community development block grant application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority to support improvements to properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh.
Your Honor, when applying for community development block grant funds, communities must enact the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. In this case, the plan pertains to properties located at 111 Pleasant Street and 4-6 Fayette Street, which again are operated by Riverbend Community Mental Health. If there are any temporary relocations of residents at those locations due to the renovations, we anticipate that those temporary relocations will be done by using space that's available within either of the affected buildings or other spaces that might be available at other Riverbend properties or any other location or facility which is deemed appropriate by Riverbend in the city. Riverbend will be responsible for paying all relocation expenses that might arise. I would note that a revised resolution was included in the City Council packet for this item, and the staff requests that the council approve the revised resolution. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for Mr. Walsh? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing at this time. Seeing no attendees raising their hand, Mr. Manager, do you have anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Then at this time, we'll close the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to read the next item, please.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application in an amount of up to $500,000 and to accept and appropriate grant proceeds of up to $500,000 and public facilities community development block grant funds for improvement of properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh.
Your Honor, again, as the clerk mentioned, this is another application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in 2021's Community Development Block Grant Funds, specifically public facility grant funds. However, they may be housing funds to support rehabilitation and renovation of properties located at 40 Pleasant Street, 42 Pleasant Street here in Concord, which are also operated by Riverbend Community Mental Health. 40 Pleasant Street houses Riverbend's emergency services programs, which include the mobile crisis team and associated apartments, the walk-in behavioral health crisis treatment center, emergency services staff, and the doorway walk-in service program. 42 Pleasant Street houses offices for Choices, a treatment program for adults with substance use disorder, the Doorway, which is a member of the state's hub and spoke program for substance misuse, Merrimack County Drug Court Treatment Program, Medication Assisted Therapy Program known as MAT, as well as a laboratory. 10 West Street provides services for the chronically mental ill at Riverbend's Community Support Program, where therapy, support, employment, and medical services are offered. The majority of clients receiving care at Riverbend are of low to moderate income. The proposed improvements include, but are not limited to, sprinkler system repairs, installation of security cameras, flooring replacement, remodeling of offices and common areas, repair and replacement of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, as well as window replacement. There's been an increase in demand for Riverbend services due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would also note again that the CDFA has made a recent decision to adjust their calendar in order to mirror the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's fiscal year, which has caused some changes to the first round of the 2021 HUD funds, which are now going to be in the third round of the 2020 HUD funds. So this request is for 2020/2021 CDBG funding. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Walsh? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Is there any attendees wishing to testify? Seeing none, Mr. Manager, do you have anybody on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Having no attendees, no one on the phone, then we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you could read the next item, please.
It's a resolution readopting the city's anti-displacement and relocation policy statement and procedures in support of the city's public facilities community development block grant application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority to support improvements to properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh.
Again, Your Honor, members of the council, when applying for community development block grant funds, the municipality must adopt the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. This particular plan, in this case, is going to be relevant for properties located at 40 Pleasant Street, 42 Pleasant Street, and 10 West Street here in Concord, which are operated by Riverbend Community Mental Health. However, because these are outpatient service facilities, no relocation is currently anticipated. But in the event relocation becomes required, the attached plan, which is attached to the resolution, would govern. Again, a revised resolution was included in the City Council packet regarding this item, and we request that the council please approve this substitute resolution. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Walsh? Seeing none, well, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. And are there any attendees wishing to testify? Seeing none, Mr. Manager, is anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Having no attendees, no one on the phone, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you'd be so kind to read item 25I, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $11,015 for the design of the new playground at White Park, CIP 51, and authorizing the sum of $11,015 as a transfer in from the Recreation Reserve for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, working with the Friends of White Park, an RFQ was issued for the design of the new playground at White Park. The team selected Playground by Leathers to help design the new playground. The Friends offered to donate up to $10,000 towards the cost of design. The total cost design was $21,015. Recommend appropriating $11,015 from the Recreation Reserve to cover the remaining cost of the playground design.
Who has questions for the manager? Okay, seeing no one, we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to testify? Seeing no attendees wishing to testify, is there anyone on the phone, Mr. Manager?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, if you would mind reading 25J, please.
It's a resolution repurposing the sum of $116,064 to include $72,600 from the Hall Street Wastewater Plant Elevator Upgrade Subproject and $43,464 from the Pennacook Wastewater Plant Lighting Upgrade Subproject to the Pennacook Wastewater Plant Drain Valve Replacement Subproject, and appropriating the sum of $33,936 for the Pennacook Wastewater Plant Drain Valve Replacement Subproject, authorizing the use of $33,936 in wastewater investment fee reserve funds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, as reported in November, the Pennacook Wastewater Treatment Plant experienced the failure of two 24-inch process control valves, which required repair on an emergency basis. In consultation with my office, the funding for those emergency repairs was obtained by authorizing a previously authorized capital improvement fund for a similar valve replacement that was planned in the FY21 budget. Total expense for this account was $150,000. It is necessary to repurpose a total of $116,064 from the elevator upgrade project and the lighting upgrade project. In addition, transfer the sum of $33,936 from the wastewater investment fee reserve. All the funds will be transferred to the Pennacook Drain Valve Replacement Project to make this project complete. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the manager? Mr. Pierce, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the city manager, so the money from which these project is being transferred, this is work that can be deferred? Am I reading this correctly?
These are These are projects that have been completed.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, this time we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify? Seeing no attendee with their hand raised, Mr. Manager, do we have anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Alrighty. With that, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you could read, I believe this is the last public hearing.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $30,000 in coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security CARES Act funding as administered by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, Bureau of Aeronautics, and accepting the sum of $30,000 for operations and maintenance at the Concord Municipal Airport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the City Council, the City of Concord was informed that it was eligible to receive $30,000 in CARES Act funding, the general operation and maintenance of the Concord Municipal Airport, for expenses incurred since January 20th of 2020. There's no match requirement with this grant. The City Council was notified of this application that we made back in May, and the funds are administered by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, Bureau of Aeronautics on behalf of the CARES Act. City has since been awarded these dollars and has until May 25th of 2024 to seek reimbursement for eligible expenses. The airport will use these funds to repair and maintain buildings and provide supplies and professional service expenses. Mr. Bahia, Deputy City Manager, who also manages the airport, did a great job with this. Glad to answer any questions.
Very much. Is there any questions for the manager? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify and attendees? Seeing no one, Mr. Manager, is there anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then with that, we'll close the public hearing. Takes us to our action phase. Madam Clerk, if you read item 26, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title 5 Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan, Schedule D of Article 35-2, Class Specification Index for the Assistant City Prosecutor Solicitor position.
Thank you very much.
Second.
We have a motion. Motion's been duly seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay. I did not hear you, Mayor Boulay. I'm sorry.
Are you looking for me or Councilor Bouchard?
I heard her and then you, please.
Oh, I didn't hear you call my name. I'm sorry. I vote yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic. I did
Yes.
not hear you. Yes, okay.
Sorry, yes.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
With that, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 27, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $718,000 for the replacement of existing outdoor lighting fixtures with LED fixtures, accepting the sum of $325,000 in incentive funding from Unitil's Energy Efficiency Program, authorizing the sum of $393,000 as on-bill financing for the remaining balance, and authorizing the city manager to enter into a long-term agreement with Unitil for this project.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Council Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I again want to commend many members of the city staff led by Brian LeBrun over such a long period of time to bring this to conclusion. A real benefit to the city in many ways, and I'm hoping that we can work with the public information officer to make sure citizens of Concord really get an appreciation of the significance of this project and that what the benefits of it are. So very excited that it's finally happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. I echo the same. Well done, everyone. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, are we ready for the vote? Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
I've received the necessary 2/3. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 28, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $49,000 for the acquisition of conservation land as recommended by the Conservation Commission, authorizing the use of $49,000 in conservation trust funds for this purpose, and authorizing the acquisition of land south of and adjacent to the discontinued portion of District Number 5 Road.
Thank you very much.
Your Honor, should we modify?
Yeah, so I believe the motion that the Mayor Pro Tem made was to approve this item with the appropriate sum of $49,900.
I'll second. Thank you.
And there's a second to that. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach, Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
With that, we've received the necessary 2/3. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 29, please.
Public hearing for the purposes of discussing a progress report regarding community development block grant funds secured by the city in 2019 for infrastructure improvements at the Top of the Hill Manufactured Housing Park Cooperative located at 190 Manchester Street in Concord.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
And with that, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 30, please.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application in an amount of up to $500,000 and to accept and appropriate grant proceeds of up to $500,000 in housing community development block grant funds for improvements of properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to, who seconded? I'm sorry, I missed the. Got it, thank you, Councilor Gray, second. Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Matson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, having received the necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 31, please.
It's a resolution readopting the city's anti-displacement and relocation policy statement and procedures in support of the city's housing community development block grant application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority to support improvements to properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Move approval of the
Second.
revised.
I think before we make a approve, let's move the revised motion if you within. So we'll try that again.
Sorry.
I'd like to move the revised version.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Second.
Motion made second to adopt the revised resolution. We had duly seconded. Any discussion? Okay, are we ready for the vote? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Matson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 32, please.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application in an amount of up to $500,000 and to accept and appropriate grant proceeds of up to $500,000 in public facilities community development block grant funds for improvements of properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental Health.
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. I apologize. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Have received motion to approve. It's been duly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Matson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Having received the necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 33, please.
It's a resolution readopting the city's anti-displacement and relocation policy statement and procedures in support of the city's public facilities community development block grant application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority to support improvements to properties owned by Riverbend Community Mental.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, did you finish? You faded out there.
I did, yes. Did everyone hear me?
Sure. Yes. Okay, with that, we have.
Move approval, the revised resolution.
Thank you, Brent. Motion made to adopt the revised resolution. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
With that, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 34, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $11,015 for the design of the new playground at White Park, CIP number 51, and authorizing the sum of $11,015 as a transfer in from the Recreation Reserve for this purpose.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. This motion's been made and seconded to adopt this item. Is there any discussion? We have Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the city staff and volunteers who are working on this project, and also just say that I'm very excited because this is not only an effort to rebuild what is a wonderful playground in our city. It actually is an effort to make it a lot more accessible to children of all abilities. So it's going to be a really exciting project, and I'm looking forward to it, and really support the volunteers who are helping to fund this phase, and also really appreciate the city support.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. Anyone else wishing to share anything? Seeing no one, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
And with that, motion is adopted. Have received, let me try it again. Have received necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Janice, the good news is there's only 2 left. Would you be willing to read item 35, please?
I would love to. It's a resolution repurposing the sum of $116,064 to include $72,600 from the Hall Street wastewater plant elevator upgrade subproject and $43,464 from the Pennacook wastewater plant lighting upgrade subproject to the Pennacook wastewater plant drain valve replacement subproject, and appropriating the sum of $33,936 for the Pennacook wastewater plant drain valve replacement subproject, and authorizing the use of $33,936 in wastewater investment fee reserve funds.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach, Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
Received necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, you ready for the last one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Number 36.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $30,000 in coronavirus aid relief and Economic Security Act funding as administered by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation and accepting the sum of $30,000 for operations and maintenance of the Concord Municipal Airport.
Move approval.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
Thank you. We have received the necessary 2/3 and motions adopted. That completes our public hearings and action phase tonight. And before we move on to anything else, I'd like to suggest we take a 2-minute recess.
Yes.
See you all in 2 minutes.
See you.
I'll wait till people turn their cameras on so I know we're generally back. So we'll come out of recess. I have no reports this evening. I do have one item for new business. So as you all remember, this council adopted a mask ordinance, and subsequent to that, the governor actually issued a statewide ordinance. The governor has extended, ours has actually expired, but we have been covered under the governor's executive order. That executive order has actually been extended, I believe, into March. Several other communities across the state have been extending theirs as well. And I would suggest that we continue with our ordinance through June 1st. If that's acceptable to the group, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
Would you like a motion, Your Honor?
Sure.
I'd like to move that we extend the mask ordinance through June 1st.
Second.
And the motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I would add one thing. I'm sorry, Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, it's more of a question that I have, and I don't know if it's directed towards you or anybody else, but I'm wondering how we should apply the ordinance to people who may already have the vaccine. So, if we're optimistic, if we're using a June 1 date, we could have a bunch of people who will have gotten the vaccine perhaps by May. And, how would we consider applying it to those people who were vaccinated at that point?
I think the only answer, somebody may have a better answer than I, but I think the answer is, from my perspective, that's a question probably for a public health expert. And I don't have that degree. And if we find that we need to amend the ordinance, we can always do that prior to June. But for now, I think we're still under the governor's executive order, so there's no harm, in my opinion, to move forward. But you raised a good question. The two other things I was going to suggest in my conversations with the Division of Public Health, some people had asked, well, I've already had it. Do I need to wear a mask? I was told, yes, you still need to wear it. And the second thing was from a constituent who raised the issue that people might be wearing it, but they wear it over their mouth. They don't wear it over their nose as well. And this person was simply encouraging that if you're going to wear it, put it over your mouth and your nose at the same time. So I'll just add those. And maybe that answered your question, maybe not, but the best I got. Does anybody else have a better answer? Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree. That's a great question from Councilor Fennessy. I think, to me, the salient point here is that everything I've read indicates, first of all, that wearing a mask protects other people, probably even more than it protects you, because if properly worn over the mouth and the nose, it prevents you from exhaling possibly the virus. And the last I read, there is uncertainty whether the vaccines prevent people from communicating the disease, although it has a 90%, efficiency or efficacy for preventing people from getting it. So I think that prudence dictates that we continue the mask mandate. And again, I think that's a great question from Councilor Fennessy. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, we do have a motion before us, so we're ready for the question. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard. Councilor Bouchard.
Yes, sorry about that.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
With that, the motion is adopted. Last thing I simply like to add is, There was a memorandum issued today by the Attorney General Ann Edwards regarding mask and face coverings, and I'd encourage y'all to read it if you've got a chance to. It talks about when to be worn and who's responsible, etc. So I just share that with you. That takes us to unfinished business. We have item 37 on unfinished business. Would anybody like to take that from the table? I have Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move that we take item number 37 under unfinished business off the table relative to keeping of chickens as pets.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to remove this item from the table. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
Motion is adopted, is removed from the table. I recognize Councilor Grady Sexton for motion and for discussion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to draw your attention to the Public Safety Advisory Board's report dated December 15th. In terms of the history, the Public Safety Advisory Board met as a full committee to discuss changing Concord's current ordinance relative to chickens on lots of less than 1 acre. The current ordinance calls for a buffer zone of at least 30 feet between property lines. In addition to 2 full committee work sessions, the Public Safety Advisory Board held a public hearing. It also referred this item to a subcommittee for additional public input through a public hearing process. The committee also reviewed written testimony in addition to a petition, which is all linked to the agenda, and reviewed materials from past council meetings as well as a planning board meeting, and also did its own research relative to backyard chickens. The Public Safety Advisory Board reviewed this referral through the lens of the public health and safety impacts surrounding chickens, not only to the public health aspects and safety of residents, but also the animals, the chickens themselves. And we looked at this specifically in reference to properties in densely populated areas of the city. And after extensive discussion and debate, the majority of the Public Safety Advisory Board voted against changing the current ordinance. So I would move that we accept the December 15th Public Safety Advisory Board report, which recommends against any changes to the city's current ordinance relative to backyard chickens.
I second that.
Motion been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to vote against the recommendation of the committee. I was a member of the planning board in the majority voting to put a 5-foot setback in, and that was a 5-2 vote. I'm a member of the Public Safety Advisory Committee board. That was an 8-3 vote. I was in the minority there. I worked on the subcommittee. I have a number of questions. I agree that the 5-foot buffer is probably too close. So I would ask this council to vote down this motion so I could offer an amendment to make the buffer 15 feet.
Thank you very much. Before we recognize anyone else, I just want to also say that you should have all received a letter today in today's packet. There are many items that were already listed, but today everyone got a memo from Francesca Brown. I just want to bring that to your attention, make sure that goes on the record. Who else would like to speak? Councilor Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this issue over many, many months. And I think the point for at least me here is it's not about squelching the idea of folks having chickens. I think that has worked really well throughout the city for most folks. But I do think we have to keep in mind very densely populated areas, and when it becomes an unreasonable combination in terms of the small amount of space that's available, because then I do think it starts to affect neighbors and other folks, and there has to be a balance there. I'm intrigued by the recent suggestion by Councillor Pierce, but I would support the recommendations of the committee at this time.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Hatfield.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what Councillor Werner just said. I know a lot of work has gone into this. And I also think that the original recommended change for 5 feet was probably a little too close, although I will note people can come see the things that my neighbors are doing in my neighborhood within 5 feet of the property line, and they might be more offensive to you than chickens. And I really like the idea of a compromise in the middle. If we keep it at 30, I would guess that you could probably count the number of people in my ward who could actually have chickens on one hand. There are a fair number of people in Ward 4 with chickens, and with very, very few complaints, other than the one case that we're all very aware of. And I think most of those people, are not able to comply with the 30. So I think a compromise in the middle is a good idea, and I would support that. And I think we can always revisit it later. There are other communities, as we learned previously, that do it in other ways through permits and registration requirements and things like that, so the city can keep track. But I think a good first step is to reduce the 30 feet, because I think for several of our downtown wards, it means, nobody can have chickens, and I think that would really be too bad. And I will note that the other portions of the ordinance, relative to no roosters and the number of hens that someone can keep, and also the requirements for cleanliness and things, those seem to be really, really strong aspects of the ordinance that we do already have in place. So I will be voting against maintaining the 30-foot, and I would support a compromise of 15 feet. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Grady Sexton again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will say that I helped to pass the original ordinance. I helped to draft that and pass it several years ago. And that ordinance, the current ordinance, has worked. And the only cases where we understand that it hasn't worked has been in cases where that ordinance has been violated. And that is essentially what we're discussing today, is a case where one neighbor violated the ordinance and it led to very extensive discord within the neighborhood. And I think if we go ahead and we sort of try to seek a compromise, what we're going to be doing is validating sort of what happened in that neighborhood. And we can fully expect that that's going to happen, and again, in this particular neighborhood, but in neighborhoods across downtown and heavily populated areas. I know Councillor Pierce had talked in our meeting and had cited one of the reasons why he is not going to be supporting keeping the ordinance at 30 feet, because there are no similar sort of exceptions for dogs, and there should be some sort of parity between the two. And I think that's really a false equivalency. Chickens and dogs are not the same, and one of the reasons why is because we very, very heavily regulate dogs in a way that we don't for chickens. And the CDC does an annual report about backyard chickens, and the most recent report was issued last month. And it said that there were 1,700 cases of salmonella that were directly linked to backyard chickens just in this past year. All 50 states had cases. 33% of the people who were infected by the salmonella ended up hospitalized. In addition, when chickens aren't properly cared for and when there's not that area where they can be healthy and there can be a healthy distance between neighbors, it can lead to things like we heard about it leading to at the Public Safety Advisory Board meeting, which are additional diseases, smells, noises, and really unhealthy chickens. We've heard cases where chickens have killed one another. And this has led to very serious, as I said, discord between neighborhoods. I think that it would be really reckless of us to go and to try to seek a compromise in this case without also putting forth certain additional regulations against chickens. So reducing the buffer zone between properties without then at the same time looking at the additional safety and regulations around the use of backyard chickens, I think is going to essentially just create more discord. It certainly will in the case that we heard of in the current property dispute that was discussed at length over several meetings. So I would absolutely recommend that this committee doesn't try to seek a compromise in that way. And if they do, I think we'll see, we've already seen what will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kretovic.
Honor. I'm going to be supporting the Public Safety Committee's recommendation to leave the ordinance as it is. Councilor Grady Sexton had brought this ordinance forward the first year that I was on the council, and I was a strong proponent of it. I see the 30-foot buffer working in Ward 3 very well. My greatest concern is that if we are to revise this ordinance today without really further looking into it to say 15-foot buffer is going to be okay, it's going to go against what I fundamentally believe is important here, which is the hens and the coop and everything associated with the chickens has to be closer to your own house than it is to your neighbors. And for the one instance that Councilor Grady Sexton brought in front of us, the hen house they are proposing is closer to the neighbor's house than it is their own. And I am not in support of that. So I'll be supporting that of the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Francesca Brown for getting involved. I'm sure this has been quite the lesson in how local government works, probably much more than she ever thought she would learn. I had the pleasure of speaking with her on the phone. I've seen various correspondence. My children have been following it as well. And I don't know how it's going to come out, but I'm very glad that you got involved and brought this to our attention. And thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you. When this originally came up, I was very concerned about a document that we had shared with us from UNH Cooperative Extension that talked about the setback distance needed for backyard chickens. The Public Safety Advisory Board Committee had an opportunity to hear from a staff member from there, and it provided some clarity about what that setback is for. And it turned out that what they were talking about in that document is a little bit different than what we're talking about here with the limited number of chickens that individuals are able to keep on their property. I too feel strongly that it would be good to strike a balance. There were a number of Concord residents who did sign a petition asking for the ability to have backyard chickens. I think 5 feet is way too close of a distance, but I would feel comfortable somewhere between 15 to 20. 15 is the number that the Public Safety Advisory Subcommittee came up with a 3-0 vote. And then, as you know, that during the full meeting, it was an 8-3 vote. I would also, just to the concern raised by Councilor Kretovic, we have had this before since October of 2019. So I do think that we do need to move forward with some resolution tonight if possible, but I would be more than willing to amend tonight to have some kind of language in there that says that the structure or the coop need to be closer to your own building and structure than to your neighbors. I'm totally comfortable with that. So I will be voting no on the proposal as is, because I do think it should be 15. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kinnison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to speak on behalf of the chickens. It is extremely unhealthy and unwise to house chickens in these small areas, leading to various diseases among the chickens. And so I'm going to vote for the motion as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Are we ready for the question? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been duly seconded. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
No.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
No.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Mattson,
Yes.
Councilor Lyon,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Councilor Pierce.
No.
Thank you.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
No.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
So it passes 11-4.
Thank you. Motion's been adopted. Okay. You ready to move on? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not rushing anybody, but it's okay. All right, that takes us to comments, requests by city councilors. Wait, I apologize. Takes us to comments, requests by city councilors. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Start with Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to echo the comments of Councilor Fennessy in congratulating Francesca Brown for a young woman who lives in the Concord community for all of her hard work to try to amend this ordinance. I too was started my civic work when I was 8 years old, writing to my town council in Londonderry, and I have no doubt that if Francesca wants to serve on this city council someday, or go beyond that, that she'll be very successful. I think she did an extraordinary job advocating, and I suspect we'll see more of her. So congratulations, Francesca.
Thank you. Councilor Chen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just like to briefly add my congratulations or my appreciation to Francesca. She and I had a nice long conversation one afternoon while I was looking across my backyard at my neighbor's chicken coop. And we talked about possibilities. We talked about trying to honor and respect other people's concerns and also the difficult job that we on the city council have balancing competing concerns and trying to find a balance and trying to make sure that one person's right doesn't conflict with another person's right. It's a dance that we do, and I think everybody around this virtual table knows it. But I agree with Councilor Grady Sexton. I think that Franny has done a remarkable job of marshaling, her arguments and presenting them in a persuasive way with passion and conviction. And I suspect that she'll be running for my at-large seat in 2 years. We'll see. But or one of ours. On a more somber note, I just want to reflect briefly on two more serious things. One is the events in Washington on Wednesday last. I think it was a tough day. I had a tooth extraction in the morning, and was napping when somebody texted me and told me to turn on the TV, and I was riveted from about 3 until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. The most, I guess, cogent comment that I've heard was apparently an American journalist interviewed a French citizen in Paris. And the French individual said, you know, you Americans think of your Constitution as a basketball, and it really is a Fabergé egg. Our Constitution and our rule of law, government based on rule of law, is indeed more fragile than I think many of us have assumed. And I think those events point to how passionately and carefully and gently we need to protect those rights. That said, I also want to mark briefly the passing of an individual who has had a profoundly positive impact on the city of Concord. Many of you may know that Rosemary Hurd passed away on December 28th. She was a remarkable woman. I was proud to know her both as somebody who helped fund the Concord for Catch neighborhood housing, and then when I retired, somebody who she grabbed by the scruff of the neck and said, I want you on my board. She was a dynamo. Her impact on the city is far-reaching. She led Catch to make the decision to convert the Endicott Hotel into market rate housing, which I think put a stake in the sand in terms of upper story housing in Concord, downtown Concord, that's been followed by others such as Elm Grove Development and their several apartment developments. She also was behind the Menino Place apartments on Store Street, many other recaptured or developed affordable housing projects in the city, and most recently the complex of workforce housing, which is going to be going up on Village Street in Pennacook. She was a remarkable woman. I am proud to say that she was my friend, and proud to say that I knew her and her work here in Concord. And I just wanted to mention that we will not see her like again in some time. And I hope that we can move forward in her absence and continue with her work. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you. Great tribute to Rosemary. I want to take this moment to condemn in the strongest of terms the actions that took place in Washington on January 6th, when our U.S. Capitol building was stormed by terrorists, resulting in extensive damage to that great building, and more importantly, the loss of life of 5 individuals. Those actions were horrendous and are symptomatic of a deep political divide in this country. I urge our new president and all state and national leaders to focus on bringing our country to a place where we can disagree without being disagreeable, but always do it in the best interest of the people of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said.
Councilor Madsen.
Thank you. I too want to add something to this. I was saddened by the recent events at the Capitol and to know that lives were lost. The disruption of the electoral voting process was disturbing. Depersonalization and generalization of political sides allows those so inclined to rationalize destructive behavior. Negativity and hate, when shared, fuel and increase divisions and result in destruction on many levels. So violence is never the way to address our differences. We all know friends, family, and neighbors who are on both sides of this issue. I ask the public to search within themselves to find some commonalities that they share with these people and with others, and to work to end violence and towards a common good. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Cody. Councilor, I think you're on mute.
You hear me now?
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, we've been on this meeting. My phone has been blowing up with messages from the FBI with regards to threats against all 50 state capitals in the coming days with as we inch closer to the new inauguration of a new president. I want to preface that by saying they are also saying some of these things are not credible. I would hope that in the city of Concord, given that we've been the state capital for more than 212 years, and that we've always offered a safe place on our city plaza for people to share their voice, whatever that opinion might be, that we will have civil discourse in our community and in our state, because it is the New Hampshire way. We may live free or die, but we do respect each other. We are a small community. We are a small state. We are like a small town. We know each other. We live and breathe this air together. And I think that we can all get along. And let's hope that these supposed reports that are coming to our state capital do not interfere with our commitment to community here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cass.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's almost difficult to find the words to describe how I felt when the Capitol building was stormed and the frightening events, and I can't imagine what it must have been like for those legislators to know that they were armed people saying things like wanting to capture Nancy Pelosi and the vice president. It's unbelievable that I could see this happen in my lifetime. And I don't think it's over. And I think in the strongest of terms, we need to condemn this. And I would hope as an entire council, we would vote to condemn this atrocity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hackett.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to add my voice to strongly condemn what happened last week in our Capitol. And it relates to me, for me, to some of the work that we promised that we would do around white supremacy and systemic racism. And I hope that we will follow through on that commitment. I know that many of you share my strong desire to do that. For me, what happened was very much about both of those issues. And I think that with all due respect, to suggest that we should all just get along really just does not honestly face what is happening in this country. And I hope that we, with humility, are willing to reflect on ourselves and the roles that we play. And at least for myself, the privilege that I have had that really just puts me in a different place. Even when I see something that upsetting, I still know that, on a daily basis, largely because of the color of my skin, but also because of other privilege, that there are just things that I will never face. There are just fears that I don't have. I heard some of the first person accounts of that day from people of color who really feared for their lives, who were just, in the city for whatever reason. So I really think we need to name that, and we need to continue with the work that we started this summer to make sure that in Concord, we're clear that we will listen to people, that we want people to get along, but it's just not that simple. There are just many divisive issues that have built up for centuries in this country, and it is going to take a lot of work to ensure that the folks who perpetrated these crimes do not prevail, and that justice and freedom actually does win. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Brady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think what we saw at the US Capitol was shocking, but in many ways, I think that it shouldn't have been unexpected. And I think that the sort of hatred that is in so many hearts and is really being directed at people of color and women and our GLBTQ friends and the media is absolutely un-American, and what happened was treasonous. And I think that these actions have really sort of strengthened my resolve to work to end violence as well as bigotry in this community and beyond. And I know that we are not going to let these hateful, violent people win.
Thank you. Councilor Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, while watching the insurrection and the attempted takeover of our government and the intent to harm our elected officials, was shocked. But as Councilor Grady Sexton said, didn't see it as unexpected. But at the same time, this is fascism. We need to stand up. We need to say no. And we need to start coming to a place where we all start off with the same facts. And I think it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And I think we need to listen to each other, but we also need to accept when we hear facts that we might not want to be true, and they are true, that we need to accept those facts and then work within the system to change whatever policy that you might be upset about. We do have problems with social injustice, with poverty, with violence against the other. And this rolled right into these fascists who just take advantage of all that and are good at inciting people to do things that are totally anti-American. So to storm the US Capitol holding an American flag or holding a flag of a candidate that you're upset lost an election, that was not fraudulent. Shame on you. And I know myself, I will stand up. I will not just nod, it's time to say no to people who are speaking fascist language and acting in violent ways. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. I echo many of the sentiments that have already been expressed. I know some people felt, sadness or disappointment. The emotion that I felt primarily was just anger. Anger because I think, unfortunately, our leader at the top has been lying to people, lying to them for 5 years now, and we need to figure out a way to at least agree on a common set of facts. Unfortunately, so many people are operating in a media bubble where they don't know truth from fiction. I don't know what the solution is, but it's definitely the problem. And sometimes just identifying the problem is the first step. I think we need to pay attention to what's going on here in the next week or so and make sure we provide all the support we can to our law enforcement and leaders to make sure we don't have any acts of violence occur in this city. And I hope that we will do what we can to make sure that people understand that words matter. Talking about violence is the antithesis of what's expected in our Constitution, both our federal and our state Constitution. If we're going to operate under the rule of law, we need to tone down the rhetoric and focus on one set of facts. And if we can at least we're not going to get everybody, but if we can get the majority of people to agree on a set of operative facts, we can have disagreements about appropriate policies, but you can't have two sets of facts.
Thank you. Council Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. It is a really very much a difficult time for our country, but I'm confident that democracy and accountability will hopefully prevail. I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that, as others have said, this has been a willful set of circumstances for many years. Political leaders lying for their own perceived benefits, electorally, raising money, and so forth off of this. That's reprehensible, but that is the fact. I also don't think that we can separate what happened last week from our own original sin of going on 400 years now, of how African Americans have been treated in this nation for that many centuries, for those many centuries. There clearly is a white supremacist element of that attack on the Capitol. And if it had succeeded, we almost had an existential event in terms of our country's history around Congress, a rampaging mob intent on murdering Speaker of the House, Vice President. That was evident. I think what is really disturbing is that as we learn more every day, in fact, every hour, it gets worse. It doesn't get better in terms of what was planned, what didn't happen, but what people wanted to happen. So I think that we need to come to grips with the fact that this is not a one-off. There are elements in this country that are intent on doing this. There are people that are very upset at the fact that by about 2040, we will be a majority-minority nation. And that fact upsets an element of folks in this country that cannot accept that. You need to work through that, but we also need to recognize it and be armed with facts and to be cognizant of the situation that this presents. We need to be vigilant, but I am hopeful that we can work through this. But people need to be held accountable and swiftly. And there is no false equivalency between what happened last Wednesday and what our African American and other people of color have been expressing in the strongest of terms themselves about what they experience every day in this country. I would recommend a book that I just finished called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. Really compelling, disturbing, made me angry, but also provided some understanding and maybe resetting my own mind in some ways in terms of appreciating the history that underlies so much of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Dodd.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very much appreciate all the words that I've heard here so far tonight. I certainly also condemn what happened on January 6th, and I think much of the attitude of selfishness and the racism that exists in our country has been encouraged to come to the surface and to the forefront. But maybe that's what needed to happen, so that we can see ourselves for who we are in this country, admit it, and if we don't like what we see, commit to change and improvement, and learn from history to help us make these changes and move forward in a better direction. We're really all in this together, and that's why I really believe that government was created for that reason. It's not the enemy, it's the solution and the salvation, and that's why I always feel so honored to serve on a local government level. As imperfect as governments might be, really our differences are our strengths, and we need to make an effort to learn more about and from those who are of a race different than ours. And I think that with that will come lessons and will alleviate a lot of the fear that people have of things that are different, people that seem to be different. I also want to just finally add that I too hope that all our upcoming local demonstrations here will be peaceful. In fact, that's really an expectation and a demand. That's the New Hampshire way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Resnick.
Thank you. I appreciate a lot of what my colleagues have said tonight, and I too condemn what happened in DC. This violent insurrection, the attempt to have a coup on our nation is unacceptable. And I would also say that from what I've seen of any of the State House rallies planned, those are of that same vein and would discourage any true American patriot from participating in those. These elections have been settled. There have been several lawsuits. The courts have said that the counts were valid. We will have a new administration on January 20th, and any efforts to subvert the American elections and our democracy is going against what it means to be an American. So I really want to encourage folks, this is not a come out rally for your candidate. If you were at the State House during one of these events, you are contributing to that violent rhetoric and the subversion of our American democracy. That said, Martin Luther King had a quote, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." And it is true that justice is upholding our nation's constitution and laws equally and ensuring that those laws are just and fair to fulfill our American promise of opportunity for all. And I really appreciated the statement that this council made last summer to take a strong stand against the legacy of racism and white supremacy. And I know that there has been talk about what our next steps would be, and I would ask that we formalize some of those this evening so that we can move on with that really important work that, as many of you have noted, is hand and parcel with what happened in DC this past week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone? Okay. First, I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's personal thoughts and I'm grateful for people to share this evening. I've been, since Wednesday, really wrestling with my own personal feelings, anger, deep anger, profound sadness at what I witnessed. And I know that I'm not alone grappling with the violence, the hatred, and the attack that was on our very democracy that we all saw unfold before our eyes. I know I had, and I suspect many of you had friends and colleagues there, and was incredibly grateful that our elected officials and our staff were able to get to safety. While there's a lot to take away from what happened, it is abundantly clear that our country needs healing and rebuilding now more than ever. And my thoughts are with all those who made to fear for their lives as they attempted to carry out their official duties in service of this country. And I was proud and heartened when, despite the day's terror, our representatives upheld their commitment to democracy and to carry out the people's work. And as an elected official, it is my greatest honor to serve the people I represent. And I am grateful to them for their service, as I am grateful to all of you for your service. Our leadership in our country and our state are critical now more than ever. And while I'm devastated by what has happened, I've never had more faith or pride in this august body. And I thank all of you for your commitment to public service each and every day. My hope is that we can all move forward together with persistence and commitment to fight even harder to create a better world for all of us. Now, having said that, I want to add two things. One, it did not go unnoticed. The level of response for what occurred on Wednesday was far different than what had occurred from this summer from many of the Black Lives Matter. I think we all have to take note of that. We have to look deep into our hearts and why did this happen and what is it about? So, I don't need an organized effort of campaign letter writing. I promised that we would do something on racial justice, and I obviously I will do that. We will do that as a community. But as I said before, I have no desire to do something that simply checks the boxes. We are not going to simply do something that makes us feel good. I want to actually move the ball. I want to actually do something that actually makes a difference. I have been in contact and communicated with other mayors around the state. Each have chose their own way. I want you to know that internally we have been working to review our own policies. Public Safety Advisory has been looking at our police department and public safety. The administration has been looking at all of our personnel issues regarding hiring and committees and such. So there's been a lot of internal work, and soon enough we'll be reaching out to the community with and to fulfill our obligation and to do something of serious nature, and I think hopefully to move things forward, to make our community a role model for what we can become. I also want to recognize that for those of you who watched any of the news today and what is potentially being planned in this country for the upcoming weeks, I am disgusted and disheartened by what I've seen, but I want to reassure this community and all the people in our state that our public safety, our law enforcement, and all branches and all levels of government have been working together, communicating, and we will be safe. And hopefully, as many of you said, if you show up, you are not a patriot. You're part of the insurrection, as far as I'm concerned. So I think we take this very seriously, and I want to reassure not only our community but the state, but we will not tolerate that behavior. So I hate ending on such a sad note, and if you can tell by my voice, I feel the anger and frustration, and then on top of that, to lose somebody like, and I'm not trying to minimize this, but just in the wake of all this, to lose somebody like Rosemary, who represented so many wonderful things, somebody who took justice that you spoke about, trying to house people who needed a roof over their head, to give people a better life, to uplift this community, to uplift this state. I mean, she was an incredible role model. I admired her greatly. And when you have people and you lose people like Rosemary Hurd, who did so much good, and you watch what these terrorists did in DC, this stark contrast just makes me sick. And it makes me feel so fortunate to live in a community where we do have people like Rosemary. So I'm saddened, but I do have hope for the future. So, thanks. Mr. Manager, do you have anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just echo, just build on what you said about the discussions and what we've heard about the planned armed protests at state capitals and potentially courthouses. And based on the information that I've seen, I believe that those threats are real and they're credible, and we're preparing for those. We've been working with Department of Homeland Security, FBI, state police, and all other jurisdictions that you mentioned. So people should be aware that we're planning for it. We're going to be as ready for it as we possibly can, but it is real. And if you do show up, you are a domestic terrorist in our mind. So prepare yourself. Go ahead. Questions?
Appreciate it. Did anybody have any questions for Tom again then? Okay, thank you for bringing that up. Now let's hopefully can move on to something a little more positive. It brings us to our suspense item. Can I get a motion to suspend the rules and take up item suspense 1, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take up item suspense 1. That is Gas Holder Building Committee findings and recommendation, together with a report from Councilor Champlin. Motion made and seconded. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hopkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Okay, we have item suspense 1 before us. Before I recognize Councilor Champlin, I just simply would like to give a very heartfelt thank you to Councilor Champlin, who chaired this committee. I think every time I turned around, I was getting invited to a Zoom meeting for this. But I also want to recognize Council Kennison, Council Credit, Council Todd, and Council Warner, who are also members of this committee, as well as some of the members of the public who were invited and participated. And I'll leave that to Council Champlin to talk about. But again, I very much appreciate the time, the effort, and the seriousness in which you took this endeavor. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to add my thanks to the council members of the committee whom you appointed. You've already named them, and the hour is late, so I won't repeat that. But I do want to mention the members of the Public Auxiliary Group that you alluded to. Ben Wilson from the State Division of Historic Resources, Tim Sink, the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Bill Norton of Norton Asset Management, John Chorlian, who we all know is a local developer who has converted many older historic structures into productive buildings for future use. Elizabeth Hengen, a noted preservation consultant, and Frank LeMay, the principal of Milestone Engineering. Again, as I said, the hour is late and my computer just decided to rebel on me, so I apologize for that. I have just lost all your images. However, I will continue on. This recommendation and the report from our committee does not represent crossing the finish line. It is more of a passing of the baton. The committee worked with speed, knowing that the gas holder, the historic gas holder, built in 1888, was in imminent danger of being torn down. The work of the committee has led the owner of the gas holder property, Liberty Utilities, to extend the deadline by which they say that they will try to pull a demolition permit to March 1st. What the committee is recommending, and what I hope will be supported by this body, is a recommendation to accept the report presented and to direct our staff to move forward on discussions with Liberty Utilities and other stakeholders as part of the plan's immediate action plan, rather immediate action phase, with the goal of entering into a memorandum of understanding with Liberty Utilities that can move us into the next proposed phase, which is called the Opportunity Bridge phase. And during the Opportunity Bridge phase, we would be moving forward with hopefully a new ownership model and perhaps an owner-manager where we could start to raise more funding to get into the final phase, which is the restoration and development phase. There's been a lot of good news in this project. Many of you have probably heard the news reports that an angel donor who apparently comes from outside of Concord has pledged $500,000, $500,000 as a catalyst to inspire the city and Liberty and others to move the ball forward and to save this historic structure. The report, which all of you is in all of your hands, outlines some of the value of the gas holder to our community and to the state. And as an icon of an industrial age gone by, and in fact, a one of a kind in this country. I would again ask you to approve the report or accept the report of the committee and direct city staff to begin the work outlined therein. One thing I would point out is that there was an erroneous news report that the final report of the committee, or the report that came from ADG Associates, recommended that the city spend $400,000 on the first stabilization phase. That is not in this report, and that is not part of the recommendation that's coming to you. That is one of the things that we have to work out as we move forward. Your Honor, assuming that I can get control of my computer again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I much appreciate that, and I appreciate the work you did again. So are there any questions for Council Champlin? We have several people raise their hand. First, I recognize Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. And thank you to Councilor Champlin, all the members of the committee, the members of the public who joined you on the committee. I've been impressed by the amount of work you've been able to do in such a short time period. That being said, I do have a number of questions that seem to be left unanswered by the report, understanding that the scope of the report is somewhat different than the decisions that we need to make as a body. My first question would be, it looks like, at least to this point, your committee has not had any sort of analysis done of the potential liability associated with the contamination on the site. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, Councilor, but it has not been left. Without attention. At our last meeting, Matt Walsh from the city staff did ask Liberty Utilities representative Huck Montgomery, who was a participant of, and I think I may have forgotten to mention his name as a member of the auxiliary group, asked him to receive documentation from Liberty Utilities legal arm as to, in order to support Liberty's assertions that they own any toxic waste on the site and the responsibility for that in perpetuity. And so I'm hoping that that will be forthcoming from Liberty and will be part of the basis of any ongoing conversations and negotiations with them.
Follow up, Your Honor.
Please.
So at least at this point, we have not done any analysis from the city's perspective with regard to what potential liability for the contamination could pass, depending on, and my understanding is it's a little bit unclear in the report as to who's going to take ownership of this site down the road.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Please, please.
Thanks. Indeed, and I think that's part of what we have to develop and have to agree upon in the memorandum of understanding with Liberty Utilities. Obviously, any agreement that involves the city would come back to this body for approval. But I think that is kind of part of the knot that needs to be addressed. And I know that the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, who was our partner in this endeavor, Jennifer Goodman, the executive director, was an active participant. And other stakeholders, such as the Division of Historic Resources, I think will bring some expertise and maybe some models as to how we might determine where ownership should lie going forward.
One more follow-up, Your Honor.
Please.
Thank you. Is it your understanding, Councilor Champlin, that if we accept this report, are we committing to this three-phase approach? Or are we just committing to the first phase?
I think we're committed to trying to move forward with the three phases. I think that we're definitely committing to the first phase, but with the intention that the first phase would lay the groundwork for the next phase. I do not think that by adopting or accepting this report and directing city staff to move forward, we're in any way committing us to anything other than to engage in trying to find a solution.
Good question.
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. More of a comment. Thank you for your work on this, Councilor Champlin. I have to make an observation, but I think there's an opportunity for the utility to make more of a contribution towards the prevention of this. And I think back to when Concord Steam shut down, and there was an awful lot of money that went towards that, the end of that. And I don't understand the PUC's, it's not clear to me whether the PUC is willing to cough up some more money or to preserve this or not. And I think that should be explored a little further. Just a comment.
Councilor Keach, that's certainly something that we had discussed during the committee meetings.
Thank you.
Councilor Quimby.
Councillor Fennessy, Councillor Keecher asking really pointed questions that are absolutely things that were discussed during our committee meetings. There's a couple of things that are hopeful. Liberty Utilities has made it very clear that they hope that this building could be saved. They've also countered that with, they hope they have no liability going forward. They've made it very clear that the lowest cost option is what they would present to the PUC. So if that lowest cost option is something that they will present, it's going to be passed on to ratepayers. There'll be no participation from Liberty Utilities or anything from that corporation as far as their funds. They have made it clear that this is not a lingering proposition that they have out there. They wanted to file to demolish that building this week, and it is by courtesy that they are continuing that, as Councillor Champlin has stated, until the beginning of March. But this will not go on forever. And they've also stated that they want no liability to this building going forward in the future. The flip side of that, and the way to look at it, is that if it's city dollars, if it's donors, if it is through the Public Utility Commission, every single bit of that falls on people. It's not going to be something that the corporation participates in. It's on us to save it, and it's also on us if we lose it. It's not clear at this point if even Liberty Utilities wants to enter into a memorandum of understanding with us, with the exception being that this is our best opportunity to save this building. And I think that it is one that's worth saving. We see this property, this building, as an icon to an industry. And given that when we look at the history across the whole entire country, this is the last one. And I think that we as a community recognize that back in the 1959, 60 timeframe when we lost our railroad station, this is going to have the same weight. If we lose this gas house, this gas holder building, that it will be 60 years from now, and we will still be regretting that we lost this building. So I would hope that our members on the council would support the recommendation of this committee and have our city staff proceed forward and seek a resolution and a memorandum of understanding with Liberty Utilities and see what becomes of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Fennessy, but Councilor Kennison, you haven't spoke yet, so why don't you go first?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to reiterate that we've heard verbally to be assured that Liberty does retain responsibility in perpetuity, as our chair said, for any mitigation of environmental issues. We are to get a letter assuring us of that, because we wanted it in writing, but we've been told time and time again that that responsibility, no matter what happens, no matter who owns the gas house, that they're still responsible for any mitigation of contamination.
Thank you. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Councillor Kredovik's comments about Liberty's desire to demolish the building led me to have a question, because my understanding is that the building right now serves as a cap for some of the contamination that exists. So if Liberty were to demolish the building, aren't they going to have some additional costs associated with creating a new cap and or remediating the site? So it seems to me that any effort to maintain the building is actually going to be to their benefit, because it's going to save them the costs associated with having to deal with that contamination that's currently capped by the building.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Please.
You're correct, Councilor Fennessy. Clearly, the Department of Environmental Services, the State Department of Environmental Services, has stated that the building intact is a cap on any waste that's beneath it, and has also indicated that if the building were to be torn down, that they would likely require additional testing and possibly additional expensive mitigation procedures in order to cap the site. It's distressing that the building is in the state of disrepair it is, since it is supposed to be a cap on hazardous and toxic waste. That has led people who have experience in this area to tell the committee that they feel that possibly the ultimate cost of eliminating the building and capping the site could far exceed the $500,000 to $700,000 that was in the report by GZA Environmental, which this body authorized the city to pay for, half of it anyway, with Liberty Utilities. So it's really in all of our interest, I think, to maintain the building. And the other thing, though, to indicate is that, as Councilor Kredovic indicated, Liberty has stated that any cost borne by them they would seek to have that recovered from the rate base. The PUC, Public Utilities Commission, would have to agree with that. But if they tear it down and mitigate it, the same ratepayers are going to be paying possibly much more. And so, in terms of what it costs the public, I think the money is better spent on maintaining the building, an iconic structure, which, as Councilor Kredovic indicated, is kind of similar to, as the report states, the Citgo sign in Boston or the historic water tower in downtown Chicago. An iconic building that is associated with the city, to its advantage.
Can I ask a quick follow-up? Councilor Champlin, did the committee explore at all what efforts, if any, Liberty has taken to maintain the building since they took ownership?
Councilor, we did not. That was not really part of our charge.
It's not good when you mute yourself and you start talking to yourself. I apologize. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for your work in such a short timeline. I was able to join a couple of the meetings and they were very informative. I'm just blown away that there's a donor out there who wants to participate at that level. And I think, it makes me really hopeful that there are more people who really care about preserving these types of historic resources that would also be able to contribute. And I think the group of supporters really haven't had that much time to even explore that. So between that and my hope that, as the point was just made, that, unfortunately, to some extent, ratepayers are on the hook no matter what happens to this site. And I would hope that we could use some of that money that would go to capping it to maybe restoring it. So overall, I totally support moving forward with this next phase. And, I think that we might find a creative solution that, minimizes the city's financial involvement. I have had a lot of comments from constituents that, there are a lot of other pressing needs in the city. So I'm just very sensitive and kind of torn between really agreeing with all of you that, we don't want this to be the next train station. But, just being very sensitive to how we use the public's resources. But at this point, I'm very hopeful and very impressed by the work that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
If you're calling on me, Mr. Mayor, I'm not hearing you.
Because I make the mistake of muting myself here. I have Councilor Todd, Councilor Pearson, and Councilor Fennessy again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I, of course, support accepting the report and the path forward as it describes, and I thank Councilor Champlin for his leadership on the committee. I also want to thank the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, who I know we've thanked a lot of people here tonight, and they've already been thanked, but I wanted to repeat that because I think that their assistance has really been invaluable in this moving forward. We were really all, I think, taken aback and taken by surprise when we learned that Liberty Utilities was considering demolition in short time. So we really don't have all the answers at this moment. But I think what the report recommendation suggests is that there is enthusiasm and support to move forward, even though we don't have a full fleshed out plan yet. And I would say further to Councillor Hatfield's comments, I've seen the online support for this effort building momentum. We received, of course, the significant donation of funds already, but I think the problem we've had is that time has been working against us on several fronts, on the continued deterioration of the building, and also the time needed to continue to build the grassroots support that definitely is out there. There's been a great group of talented volunteers out there who I know are interested in continuing to move this forward. So I'm really very hopeful, and the reason I'm supporting this is I'm really very hopeful that this is the start of a path that will lead to a successful conclusion on this and saving the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Champlin did do a great job, as did the whole committee, and I attended, I think, probably every meeting in the audience and gained a lot of information. This is one complicated issue. At every turn, there is something that you can or cannot do. For instance, you can't build a floor in that building in its current state, because then you lose the cover of the gas holder, which does away with its value and its uniqueness and makes it different from every other gas holder in the country. I have a question for Councillor Hatfield in her former role as the Office of Consumer Advocate. It's my understanding that Liberty Utilities is going to recover the cost of demolition through the gas prices. It's not through their rate base, so there's no earnings involved. It's just a pass through. And what that means when they do that, it's in the cost of gas, and that's what the gas customers will pay. Now, it's an infinitesimal amount per each little unit of gas, but they have roughly 100,000 customers, and if it's $500,000, that's $5 a customer. But that's every gas customer in New Hampshire. So I would imagine as the consumer advocate, you might have a problem with that if that came through to the Public Utilities Commission when it came to low-income people and everyone else involved. Because that means if the 100,000 ratepayers or gas product payers, I should say, in the state of New Hampshire are paying extra for their gas to save the gas house in Concord, you can bet that the same may happen, that Concord residents will be paying a little bit more for their gas to save the Lebanon Opera House if it became the same thing. So is that a true representation of what the Public Utilities Commission and the Office of Consumer Advocate would have to deal with when Liberty goes to them?
Councilor Attorney Hatfield, would you like to field that
one? So yeah, I mean, those are great questions. And if my memory serves, there actually are several other contaminated sites in New Hampshire from the legacy of manufactured gas that all ratepayers have contributed to. One up in the Guilford area comes to mind. So, as you know, Councillor Pierce, with your background in utilities, it's the ratepayers that typically pay the bills. Utilities like Liberty do have an environmental surcharge already built in for these types of costs. And so, yes, the prudently incurred costs would be passed on to all of Liberty's ratepayers. My hope is that if demolition and capping, say it was $500,000, my hope is that, the parties with the decision-making power and also the consumer advocate would be willing to, reach an agreement where those funds could instead be used for restoration. That's my hope. And my understanding is that some of the folks working on this project have actually spoken with the PUC staff to urge them, to be open-minded, particularly if ratepayers would actually end up being more protected going forward. But yes, at the end of the day, the ratepayers would pay.
Okay, which is the left pocket or the right pocket, it's the same pair of pants, taxpayers and ratepayers. So, but I'm going to support this. I think the building needs to be saved, but it's going to be a tough row to hoe to find the right way to do it. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. So my question was going to be, I think it's been partially addressed by Councilor Hatfield, but I'm interested to see what our attorney, Jim Kennedy, says, because I'm trying to figure out, based on what I've heard, how are the contamination costs, the remediation costs borne? I mean, it seems to me that the utility is going to have to pay for those, and I don't know whether they get to send that to ratepayers or not. But if the contamination costs are going to be borne by ratepayers throughout New Hampshire, that's a much greater universe than the taxpayers in Concord paying for those same costs. So I guess I'm a little confused as to who ultimately bears the costs for if they do decide to demolish it. Obviously, there's significant remediation costs that would be associated with that.
Question of Mr. Kennedy. There he is.
Yes, Your Honor. I have had, and members of the council, at least brief conversations with Mike Sheehan, who's Liberty's in-house counsel, relative to the gas holder building. And we have discussed the concept of the remediation of the site in general. My understanding is that there's a set amount that would be available for Liberty to use based on their plan. They're willing to contribute what they would have contributed to raise the building and cap it. And so that's a set amount, whether that's $500,000 or $1 million or something that may be authorized by PUC, which they haven't authorized, or DES, which they haven't authorized at this juncture. So I think everything is really exploratory at this point. Whether the ratepayers would be on the hook, I think Councilor Pierce is asking good questions. Certainly Councilor Hatfield is learned in this area. My understanding is that the ratepayers were not going to be on the hook, but again, I think that's something to explore more. But I think looking at the report as I read it, it's recommending that we explore this as an option. Is this at all possible? Is this something in the best interest of the city? And I think that building down there in the south end, it's a beautiful, it's a unique building. And, I think every effort that the committee is recommending is saying, make every effort reasonable and possible to save it. And I think, that's how I would interpret it. And if it could be saved, that's great. I think the donor of $500,000 is wonderful. Then again, that could be a drop in the bucket to, the amount of contamination that's on that property. You do know that just the Concord Pond site, you approved a couple of weeks ago an access agreement for Liberty Utilities to start its remediation efforts there at Healy Park. And there's going to be a cap down there in a few years, which is a tremendous work that's going to be done. And it's due to the contamination of coal tar that the gas letter building had a river going and creating the tar pond. So remarkable contamination there. There's been much litigation regarding this issue. The New Hampshire Supreme Court has found Liberty liable for the cleanup, and it includes the gas holder building as well. But I think, from how I read the report, it says make every effort reasonable and otherwise to see that we can preserve that building. And so if the council was to do that, I would endeavor that the city administration would pursue that path, knowing, of course, that certainly we wouldn't want to take on a limitless liability for the city, but taking all steps and measures with Liberty and any other interested parties to do that. But I think at this juncture, answering Councilor Fennessy's question in the discussion tonight, there are many unanswered questions that would need to be resolved prior to any transfer of property in the city's name.
Okay. Councilor Fennessy, does that answer your question?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, no problem. I don't see anyone else's hand raised in the council. Any further discussion? We do have a motion pending before us. Councilor Royce Hawkins, do you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I just noticed that one of the attendees has their hand up.
Okay. I think the committee is familiar with this gentleman, and he's got some real positive things from what I understand. I think the best bet's for this gentleman to work with the committee, who will continue on if we accept this report. That's the best place for him to work with.
Mr. Mayor, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay. So it was pointed out that we do have somebody in the attendees who wishes to speak. We typically don't hear from folks during a report. And I just want to encourage this gentleman, if we move forth with accepting this report, to work with the committee, which will continue to work with the administration. And so I think that's where the best effort lies. Do you hear that? Okay, thank you. So with that, I don't see any further discussion. We have a motion pending before us, so we're ready for the question. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nine,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Warner.
Yes.
And with that, the motion is adopted. I guess it's easy to say that you've done a lot of work, but now the work continues. And I want to just thank everyone who participated, and I want to thank them for their continued service. Probably didn't realize what you're signing up for, but there you are. Okay, with that, I have no further items on the agenda. Mr. Manager, do you have anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could I make a motion, please?
I'm hoping it's the one I'm hoping you'll make. Yes.
Oh, I would move that we would seal the minutes from our non-public session.
Thank you very much.
Second.
And the motion's been made and seconded to seal the minutes from the non-public session prior to this council meeting. Motion made and seconded. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Warner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing that up, Councilor Pierce. And the motion's adopted. How about another motion?
I move we adjourn, Your Honor.
Hey, there we
Second.
go. There we go. Motion made, seconded to adjourn. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay. I did not hear you, Mayor Boulay. I'm so sorry.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Jawohl.
Councillor Fennessy,
Ja.
Counselor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield,
Yes.
Counselor Keach,
Yes.
Counselor Kennison, Counselor Kretovic,
Yes.
Counselor Matson,
Yes.
Counselor Nyan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
and Counselor Werner.
Aye.
With that, the motion's adopted. Thank you for everyone for your patience this evening, and have a great week, and please stay safe.
Thank
Well,
you.
everyone.
I
Good night, everyone.